Body Heat, the masterpiece written and directed by the well-known scriptwriter Lawrence Kasdan, is a film which can be analyzed from multiple points of view, fortunately. We could say that, of course, it belongs to the noir genre, as it has its main elements. It occurs mostly during the night, we have a textbook femme fatale, and there is a sort of crime thing going on. Another insight we could get into when talking about this film is how the scam works, as of course, it is also a con movie. However, let's take a look at the general climate of the film, literally and metaphorically, the constant, as the movie title says, heat. Following our previous statement as to how to approach the movie, we could ask ourselves, why this is a noir film? Is this a neo-noir? Or is it more of a con movie? Well, the question that matters most as of today is this: why so much heat? Why the characters are constantly sweating? How important it is to the film that not only the heat is overwhelming, but also a theme which the characters discuss.
It's the heat.
One film Body Heat addresses the most, perhaps its main reference, or at least a film by a director which this movie looks at with great interest, is Rear Window by Alfred Hitchcock. If we take a deep look at both films, we can figure out that both of them deal with the idea of voyeurism. We remember Jeff, an immobilized photographer, looking at their neighbors through his camera lens to finally discover a macabre crime. In Body Heat, we see Ned looking and following Matty in the early concert scene. Both films follow this path. The protagonist looks around and then he gets into a world in which he doesn't belong. However, the main thing that connects them is the overwhelming heat that surrounds the movies. Jeff, in Rear Window, has an injured leg and for that reason he can't do any outside activities, so he has to stay in his apartment all day long. In the beginning of the film, we see Jeff sweating to the high temperatures of his town. Then, he grabs his most frequently used object, the camera, and starts peeping on his neighbors through his window. And finally, all comes down to the moment in which his neighbor finally enters his apartment and tries to kill him. How much is the heat involved in the overall plot? One thing that Rear Window suggests, and Body Heat literally exposes, is that something is got to be done with that much heat. Heat is a problem which has to be, somehow, resolved. Also, these high temperatures are very close to something both films share: boredom. Boredom, as well, leads to an apparently simple but interesting activity: wandering. Leisure, loneliness, and lack of concrete objectives result in this act, which makes the character just walk around looking for something. Something that the main character, as in Hitchcock's Vertigo, doesn't know where it will lead to. This, as well as the heat theme, provokes a necessity from Ned to somehow find an answer to a question he never asked, because he didn't know it in the first place. That's how the conflict begins. For example, here, we see Ned wandering around a concert in his town, not sure where to go to, when suddenly he runs into a woman he feels irrationally attracted to. Yes, we could argue that the reason may be her evident beauty and the smoking hot, to continue a heat-related theme, but also, as we see in this shot, Ned realizes maybe this woman is his answer to the unbearable heat, boredom, and leisure. Now, let's look closely at this scene. Ned and his friends, Lowenstein and Oscar, are having supper at the bar they usually attend, when the main boring topic of the heat comes out.
How's the cod business, husband?
Real good. Always starts happening in weather like this. When it gets hot, people try to kill each other. Everything bad since the wave started. It's that crisis atmosphere, you know? People dress different, feel different, they sweat more, wake up cranky, and never recover. Pretty soon, people think the old rules are not in effect. Start to break them, figure nobody will care, because it's emergency time.
Oscar, the voice of reason of the film, and of course, the cop, accurately says that the hot weather usually comes with a crisis atmosphere. This demonstrates what we said earlier, that something is got to be done with the heat. What we know by normal is not going on anymore, and the bounds of the real and the oniric, the legal and the forbidden, are rather fuzzy. In the first frames of the film, we see smoke, which probably comes from the burning of the Seawater Inn, far away from Ned.
My God, it's hot.
As if the fire, which emanates heat, a synonym of trouble, was nowhere nearby him. And at the same time, it is the only interest Ned has at that point. As the heat itself, something is got to be done about it, putting out the fire or, symbolically, resolve a problem. The last thing we'd like to address is how the theme of the heat evolves throughout the movie. First, it is represented by a fire, which shows us a mere context of the town's current situation and its probable causes. Then, heat develops into a more abstract drive, boredom, which leads to a sexual impulse. In the case of Ned, he breaks into, or rather, Mattie makes him break into his house to seduce her, who is a married woman. And Mattie elaborates a plan where she would kill her husband and take all his money. And finally, the idea of heat will be transformed in a much more interesting subject, and it is what makes the film unique: the introduction of the fantastic. When we talk about fantastic, we are not addressing magical, supernatural, or marvelous stories. Fantastic is something, a soul element, that twists the ordinary world. In Body Heat, everything is sort of fuzzy, confusing us, the viewers, and even the characters, as to what is the nature of the things going on.
Hey lady, you wanna fuck?
That's why we see Ned confusing Marianne for Mattie, which then will develop in a sort of exchange identity theme that, of course, was followed by the previous mentioned film, Vertigo. We also see a lot of fog shots, characters appearing from nowhere, and doubled personalities. And at the end of the movie, the heat returns back to its more realistic approach, which is the mere climate of the film. Again, it's hot, Mattie, or Marianne we rather say, is sweating, and a small talk about the weather goes on again.
Did you skunk?
Yes.
Everything remains the same. Boredom, loneliness, and sexual impulses remain, all connected by a common factor: heat. Well, that's it for now, and see you next week on See Cinema.
If you like the video, please comment, like and subscribe.